Good evening, everyone. This is Community Preservation Committee meeting, City Council hearing room, Tuesday, February 25th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Could I get a call to order, a roll call for the committee members, please?
Val Lehman.
Jim Soul.
Kristen Cantara Olivera.
Jim Souza.
John Brandt.
Victor Farias.
And we have Paul Machado that has been appointed by the mayor. He happens to be on vacation this week, and we are missing a housing authority appointee and planning department appointee. Did anyone sign up? We have citizen input on the agenda next. Anyone sign up for citizen input? Okay. I'd like to welcome Paul Machado. He was on our committee for several years and had to step down, and I'm glad to see him coming back because he was really great on our committee. So I'm looking forward to having him back on. So he will be back at our next meeting. Could I get an acceptance of the meeting minutes from February 10th, 2020?
I make a motion to accept the minutes from February 10th, 2020.
So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the funding hearings. This is our last batch of funding hearing projects. 7 projects.
I would like to make a motion, actually, to take G out of order, the Fall River School Department, if we could.
I second that.
So I have a motion and a second to take the Fall River School Department project out of order. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. School Department, please come forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. On behalf of the Superintendent, we are...
Just state your name, please.
My name is Ken Chico, Chief Operating Officer for Republic Schools. On behalf of the Superintendent, he would like to extend his gratitude for allowing us to reach this round and take another stab at trying to preserve this building. You've done some work with a new roof on this building, handicap accessibility to this building, and within the next probably 30 days, we probably will be holding our first meeting, school committee, subcommittee meeting in that building due to obviously the funding through CPA. So the request for 2020 is chimney restoration, which is already designed, window restoration, and existing condition survey. There's been quite a bit of work encapsulating asbestos in the building, using some floating floors, and I think the existing conditions will bring the rest of the building to light and other work that we have to accomplish in the building. We have 78 windows in that building. The project is very large. The estimates that we're using here for a total project cost of $650. We had some estimates during the last round of restoration work on some of those windows, some of the larger windows, especially the windows in the front of the building and the one in the staircase. And we based it on those numbers. However, it's a public project, so it would go out to a competitive bid, and we would move forward with that.
So this is going to be a sort of, you're submitting as a 3-phase, so each
Right.
year you would come back before
We
us.
would, and depending on those estimates, this could be obviously a 2-year project if the numbers come in better than we're anticipating. The chimney work, as I said, is already designed, so that's one piece
Was
that'll
that
come
done when
out
the
of-
roof was?
It was, right, we designed it, but at the time, we didn't have enough funds
Yep.
to take it, to the next level,
So
so
the point
design work went in.
of doing the chimney restoration part of it.
Yes, yes, but everything else is completed.
And how far along is the window, is the window project started already? or
The window project is not started. So what we plan on doing, the first step would be the survey,
Yep,
the
the
condition
feasibility,
survey.
yep.
So that would be the easiest piece for us to start on. And that's where we would start.
Mhm.
We do have, and on one of the pages, it shows the in-kind contribution that the school department will be, other funds.
Yep.
As most of that is in-kind with our personnel, and that'll take place. I honestly believe that number's a little low, because our carpenters will take care of most of the interior work on the replacement, renovation, or restoration of the
So is the
windows.
intent to send the windows out and have them restored, like, the way that?
So from the conversation we've had with contractors who've worked in the building and also with the last designer, is that some windows they will work on in the building, but most of them will be sent out.
Mhm.
And after looking at them, he feels that 80% of them will be restored.
That's good.
So they're in terrible shape, but they're not
Yeah.
beyond
Yep,
repair,
Great.
so, which is what we're looking forward to.
yep. That's good. Yeah, it's exciting to see this back on. It was disappointing that it got, the kibosh last year, but I'm glad to see it back on this year.
And as I said, the building that we have, and our intent is to have public meetings there, will obviously allow more people to be in that building
Yep.
and
Yeah,
enjoy
it's a beautiful
what we
building.
enjoy every day. In that beautiful
Yep.
building.
Are there any questions for Ken?
I have one. Is this the first year of a 3-year renovation that would cost
It is.
$650,000?
It is. And our hope is that it doesn't hit that amount, but using the matrix that we had available to us, without going out to public bid, without excluding people from bidding on the project, this is the best number we could come up with right now. So the hope is we do the existing studies, the chimney work will happen right away, and then the bidding process for the restoration of the windows would be the third part of it for this year. So my guess is that realistically, we're probably going to end up with about 10 to 12 windows being worked on this year in this round, and then we would resubmit in the future. But I do believe the district has had the opportunity through some budgeting issues on the city side to do a lot more work. We're according to our net school spending, we can't spend more than $150,000 of net school spending money on any project. However, the school committee can vote to do that without setting precedent. So we've done a lot of renovations in buildings that have gone over that 150, or close to the 150. I think we haven't gone over as of yet. But we've done a lot of projects, whether it be gymnasiums in schools, building basketball courts on the outside of Talbot, some major work that we've done. And the superintendent is very adamant that this building will be finished under his watch. So we'd like to move it along, so it may be a situation where our in-kind piece will be more than in-kind.
Yep.
And
That
we
you have-
may
that you
throw
have.
some dollars at it, especially if we get some kind of momentum going. And then if we could get at least 30% of the windows done and 40% of the windows done this year, that would be a goal that we would set.
Which side of the building's the worst?
There's a portion of the north side, the northwest corner, that's really bad. But the east, those windows are literally falling apart. So if there are any windows that cannot be, it's gonna be those, and they're all smaller windows. Fortunately, on the east side, they're a much smaller window, so the main windows, the sizable windows are all on the south side of the building.
Yep.
The very large ones, and then we have one large one in the back at the staircase. But that's the intent of the project, is that we will probably invest a certain amount of dollars.
It's nice for us that it's phased over 3 years, I think. It helps us with well, you know,
Absolutely.
it's definitely good for us. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
So we need a motion to bring us back to Pete.
I'll make a motion to bring the meeting back to order.
Second that.
So I have a motion and a second to bring us back to the Niagara Greenway. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Isn't that Bank Street Armory?
I'm sorry, Bank Street Armory.
You're up.
Chris, you're up.
Chris.
Good evening, Commissioners. It is Chris Gallagher, Director of Facilities. So you have in front of you is a project for the Bank Street Armory. We're looking to replace the upper roof. We have in the past, we did the lower roof and chimney. We worked with MHC from the state. We got a grant to do the chimney, and with CPC's help in that, we did the lower roof. We're looking to do the upper roof at this point in time. We've done some shoring of it and stuff like that. It's in kind of tough shape. It's not leaking because we've been maintaining it to stop it from leaking, but it is quite damaged. We have an estimate from the architect. It should be in here in the back. I don't know if it might be right there. Looking at the cost is went from 419 to 517,000. He was a little bit estimating a little high because we're looking at quite a bit of framing inside. Some of the main sticks that hold the roof and the beams that go across are pretty much like dry rotted and have dried out, so that they're starting to squash down from the weight. So there's some replacement. Unfortunately, I can't do this in a phase project like Mr. Pacheco is going to do with windows, because it's going to be a roof and it's going to be wide open. So we'd like to do this. I'm still working on getting some other additional funding, trying to go through CDA for some additional funding if we could do that. And if so, I might be able to, and depending on the bids, would they come in, and as you well know, we've got to do it through mass procurement and stuff. We do prevailing wage, so it's a little more on the expensive side than it is on the private side. I'd like to get some repointing done as well. With some of the additional funds that I may be able to get from CDA, so that coming forward, then will be the next steps or the next phases that I would like to do, and start to phase that building all the way around to get the repointing done as well on that building. And then lastly will be the windows. So moving forward with that, hopefully we can get a roof on that this season, and we'll know that we're weather protected. The gymnasium roof, when we did the chimney, kind of did an overall inspection of it with stock architects, and it's in very good shape. It's slate. We got a couple little pieces of copper missing, but when we did the upper roof, and we'll do the same thing on this one, it's a very large parapet wall. If you go up there, you can see it's about 6 to 7 feet high all the way around. And inside, we were allowed by the standards for the Secretary of Interior to remove that copper that was on the inside, and we were able to bring our roofing up. We did some new copper riglets all the way around that would cover the new roofing, but we saved all of that copper. So it's that patinaed, the same age, the same year, and it has that same patinaed look to it that we're going to be able to repair what's on the slate roof for a couple of pieces. And if you, I don't know if you remember, on the side where there's the steps that go down the side on both sides of the gym, there's a couple of caps there that had like a coil metal put on them, I guess years ago, that the copper had ripped off and stuff like that. So I'd like to kind of fix that with the copper that we saved. And the same thing with the upper roof, the copper that we're going to save from there, be able to save that copper and be able to use that for repairs on the gutters, on pieces like that and areas like that. So we'll keep that same patina look of the building going forward. So we're trying to do everything we can to that building. We've been doing a lot of cleaning of that building, cleaning it out of things that were left behind over the years and stuff. Unfortunately, right now we use the gymnasium as a little storage area for some of the Christmas stuff and things like that that we have. We have all of the, and I might have sent pictures, might have been you, or you, we might have sent pictures that, all of the skylights from the central fire roof, we stored in there.
Oh,
So all of those skylights that we said.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, all of the skylights that we said we were going to keep, we store them right there in there so that they're not anywhere else. They're there, protected, guarded, they're out of the weather. So if we ever needed them or wanted them or added them to anywhere, we can do that.
has there been any discussion on possibilities for the building?
There
Of-
have
of
been,
use?
there's been some discussion of things, what are the things we'd like to do. Obviously, there was some office spaces, it's in a arts district area. That's been a couple of discussions about that. The other thing was some like black box theaters, where they could do some theaters in there, have different events that they could have in there, obviously, basketball and things like that, but do something with the gym where you could have some events, but you could also do some plays and other things of that, have craft shows, like Durfee has a very, very large craft show every year,
Yep.
it's quite large. You wouldn't hold something as large as that there, but you could definitely
Yeah.
still do like type of shows.
Once this project is accomplished, will that bring it to the point where it can be used? Or is there,
No.
like, what else needs to be done to
After
get it to
this,
that point?
again, we still have to obviously do the repointing, we have to do the windows, stuff like that, but to get to that next level, that being that it's been vacant for a while, would then cause you to go into, and we have a full study on it, and I believe you have the study, we gave you
Yeah.
the study, into the ADA, fire sprinklers, elevators, obviously, like I said, the handicap and the ADA would have to have the ramps and all of that and stuff there, heating system, air conditioning system. So there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done to the building before you could actually get it open.
Yeah.
Doing some of the things we do, we could do, looking at it, maybe do something on the first floor before we do go into the elevator. Maybe we can open up the first floor level.
Yeah.
Again, that would have to go through with the building department, the architects. We'd go in there and see, okay, well, maybe we don't use the upper levels for anything, and maybe we can now open up that first floor level to something a little more. But again, it would all hinge on what we would do at that point for what we wanted to use it for. So obviously, we gotta have somebody go in and run it and be there and
Yep.
and what we would do.
Chris, I heard some hoopla about that the building is technically owned by the Parks Department, which puts a little bit of a crux in the matter. You know how I feel about the Armory, I'm gonna be doing whatever I can to support getting it preserved, but what's the bottom line of that?
Well, we looked at a few things, and again, we'd have to go to, Corporation Council on that, but our feeling is that it's a historic building, number one. So that falls under your peer review and not as a recreational center. It's no longer a recreational center, it's been closed. So if we were to do anything, it's a change of use. So it's no longer a recreational facility. So I say that the park, it doesn't fall under the park board, because it's not a recreational facility anymore. Right now, it's a historic preservation or historic building. It's on the National Register. So I believe, and again, not 100%, but I think we could get some information maybe from Corporation Council, but being that it's been a vacant building, I think in their argument of some of that hoopla is that it fell under the park board for working with the Armory Commission for recreational.
Did the park board know that it was oversight?
I'm not 100% sure. I know it was brought up at a historic meeting, it was brought up.
So this is a technicality that
Yes.
needs to be addressed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I feel that, it meets the historic guidelines, it's historic, it's no longer a recreational facility, it's
Oh, I
been
don't think you have to
closed.
convince any of us.
No, it would just, all I think it would need to do would be to go before the ordinance committee. It would
Right.
be easy enough to explain to the ordinance committee why it shouldn't
And
fall under the purview of the
The
park
one
department.
thing too, we as a committee have made the decision that we want a board to be supportive of a project.
Yep.
And if they're not supportive, we decided that we wouldn't be supporting the project. It doesn't mean that we can't, we can support what we want.
Right.
Right.
We've made that decision on our own, but we can do what we want as far as a project that is legitimately valid. So that's all I'll say about it.
Yeah, and like I said, since it's been closed for a multitude of years, it's no longer a recreational facility, and the CB Rec Recreation itself has moved to another facility.
Yeah.
They've actually have purchased and supplied in that. So going back to that, this is gonna be, I think, a multi-use building. When we can get this back up and running, it'd be a multi-use building.
Yeah, no,
It won't be
I would just like to see it cleaned up, because Jim is right, I don't wanna muddy the waters if we don't have to. I'd rather see it just cleaned up.
Yeah, and that's what we've been trying to do, and trying to get it to that point. Like I said, we've done a lot inside where we've cleaned out a lot of the debris and things like that that were left behind, and we still got a couple of more floors to go. We did all of that other work already to it and stuff, and we're trying to preserve that building, trying to save everything that may come off that building, the windows and the copper that we're taking off the roof and things like that. So we're trying to preserve all of that stuff so that we can have that, so that we can rebuild it right back
The
to.
repointing part, is that you're talking about as part of this project? Is
It-
that the having those trees removed from the top of the
Yes,
building?
yes, that's
Pulling,
all,
like-
yeah, I wanna pull all of that
Yeah, because that's
out, yeah,
important, I mean, that's
yes.
just breaking the building apart.
Yeah, yeah, and that was one of our things, and like I've talked with Kristen, we're going with the library, and we're trying to look to repaint those windows there, they're all faded and stuff. And when we do, we're bringing in the man lifts to do that this spring, to start the painting of the windows. But before we did that, we were bringing in the man lifts to be able to start, to take those trees out and all of that stuff before they flourish throughout the summer. And that was part of it, because the lift that we have to bring in is a 120-foot man lift. So we're gonna do it at the same time and be able to do kind of a 2-for-1 deal. Be able to go over there, take all of that stuff out. What we can't get or can't reach when the cranes come in to do the roof, we can then do the rest of that stuff, because some of it might be a little tough to get from the ground, to get over in the backside between the two chimneys.
Yep.
To get into there. So we might be able to do that with the cranes when that comes in, if we can't reach that area. So, but that is part of the plan, is to be able to take all of that out of there and
That's
all
good.
of that, yeah.
I got one more thing, and, this building is such a sensitive building about what the actual use is, and it's a big building, and it is gonna cost, I think it really needs a business plan, solid model.
Yeah, and I think that was part of, I'm not sure if that was part of it in the study, if they did things like that in the study of what possibilities of what that could go on in there. Like I said, I know there were flower shows, I know there was the basketball, I know that there was
Yeah.
business.
I'll go back and
office spaces.
and review it,
Yeah.
but it might be that going forward should have a feasibility study done, a professional feasibility study, because
And I thought that's what that was when, what we gave you.
I think those are existing conditions.
But
I'll check.
Yeah, I thought he did a little bit of all of that in that.
Yeah.
It was a pretty big study, so I thought that was in there, because I know that there was some talk about, like I said, what were some of the uses we could do in this building, so
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
And if not, again, I have no problem with that, we can definitely go and do the feasibility study and stuff and do
Well,
like a
I feel
business plan.
the same way as
Yeah.
you, I'm supportive of you, I mean, we need to find a way to preserve the building, but also to make it.
Make it work.
Make it work, exactly. So, I mean, like I said, it's in a cultural arts district, so, you know, that's was some of the areas that we were looking at maybe to go for funding and stuff, so, that was one of the grants that we thought that we might look at to do, to go for, because it's in the arts overlay district and stuff like that, you know, making it part of a cultural center and stuff like that. A few things, and we'd have to talk about with historic preservation and CPC and all of that. No more than 50%, I think it's 51% of the building could be used for other than cultural arts. So if we're gonna come up with a plan and we're gonna do it for cultural arts, we gotta use 51% of it's gonna be used for cultural arts, and then we have the rest of the building to do 49% to do what we wanna do to it. So,
Does the city have a grant writer now?
yes, Jane DiBiasio, I think that's her.
She's back?
Yeah, she's back, yeah,
Oh.
she's back,
So,
yeah.
so
Didn't know that.
is there possibility, do you, as, you know, go to her occasionally and say,
Yeah.
hey, I
Yeah,
got this
they-
project, is there anything out there?
Jane's fantastic,
Yeah.
you know, she's great. I
We
don't
should
think
meet
she's
with her
fully
one day.
on board yet, you know, but she is coming back very shortly. So,
Is she back already, or?
well, she's not back right this,
Oh.
but she's coming very
Coming back,
shortly. So
okay.
that was some of the things that we'd sit down with
Yeah.
her and talk to her about, see what we can go after. But again, it's to get some of these boards' recommendations.
We as the board should probably meet with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think, you know, when we're doing this, that we just keep in mind that if we go for those cultural grants, that 51% is gotta stay for that, and the rest of
Yeah.
it we can do as we please, but, you know, we just gotta know that going forward, so that when we do this plan, you know, knowing what we wanna do, that
Yep.
You know, we're gonna have only that portion that we're gonna be able to do something else with.
So I was gonna say, because I mean, the roof, I like the project, but you got a lot of work to do. So we need some more resources. except
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at, and like I said, I'm trying to go after some more funding, but again, right now at this time of the year, they're doing some of their budgetary stuff and things like that, so for CDA, for him to give me a commitment right now is a little tough. He feels that he can, but he wants to be 100%.
But like say next year, hopefully we can.
Oh,
do
yeah,
some-
that's some of the plans. I'm actually trying to do something with my budget too, is starting to put in for, I'm calling it capital and/or match type of thing. So when I have CPC, when I have cultural, when I have MHC, when I have any of these things, disability, we just finished our disability assessment, so now we can go for disability grants and things like that. So when we have to be able to match that, I'll have some funding hopefully to put in my budget to be able to use for those sort of things.
Yeah, I like the idea too. It's about time that something gets done. That Armory's been dead for a while. Is there anything that you can show the park department that this doesn't belong to them anymore, to us?
Yes, like I said, we're
Just-
gonna have to work with Corporation Council. The first I heard about it is Kristen told me about it when they came to the historic preservation and stuff. I gotta go talk with Corporation Council, sit down and what they feel. But like I said, what we feel, or what I feel, and again, it's only my opinion, is that it's been closed now, it's a vacant building. It's no more recreation in there, so now that it falls under us, and it's very simple. You know, like I said, we get a ruling on Corporation Council. If we have to go to City Council, but right now, and I don't think that they have any interest in it right now because there's nothing there for them. So I don't think that they have any real interest in either way of the building, so.
Well, because it's an ordinance, it's still, it'll have to go through.
Through
But
ordinance,
that's the
yeah.
easiest thing, is just to go before city council, have them refer it to ordinance.
Right.
But talk to corporation council, and then they can just, I think it would be easy enough to change. I don't think it would be a big
I
deal.
wouldn't,
No.
there wouldn't be much opposition.
I don't
No.
think so, but because it
I
is
wouldn't
ordinance,
say it.
it'll still have to go
Not
through that.
very much.
And like I said, they're doing the study, doing the plan, if it's not already in that. And for some reason, I wanna say it was, but it might not have touched base on a lot of it.
Yeah.
So maybe we do something a little bit more in depth of what we can do and what we can get going on over there and stuff like that.
Yeah, because if you can get that out of the way, then, this is, like I said, this is great. So-
Yeah, we wanna preserve the building. I keep trying to do a little bit on it every time, a little bit of it. There's a large amount of money that needs to
Yeah.
be brought into this
I-
building, but I don't wanna just let the roofs go.
Yeah.
And not do anything with them, because that's
Bring- I
really
mean-
what's gonna hold us from doing any damage inside.
Bringing that point up though about the ordinance, I would just ask that you put it into the ordinance committee, go to the city council, have them put it to the ordinance committee, have it resolved this way, it's a dead issue
Yes,
for
sir.
us.
Yep.
Like, I'd rather have it that
Yep,
way,
yep, not a problem.
so,
Great. Thank you.
Oh,
Any other
thank you.
questions?
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
The next item is the Niagara Quicksand Greenway.
Yeah, that's been withdrawn. We've been asked by the city planner that he's fairly busy now.
Okay.
With some of the other CPA projects that.
Yep,
we've
which
given.
we've seen, yep,
So we've agreed that we'll hold this off until next year.
okay, all right. While we have this project here, I would like to say one thing. The Taunton River Bike Rail Trail that we funded the feasibility study for, there's a meeting on March 12th. It's a design charrette right at City Hall here from 4 to 7:30, so if the public wants to come and talk about their ideas, being that this is sort of all connected with the rail trail things. March 12th, 4 to 7:30, I think probably in the lobby here.
I think it's in the, yeah.
Atrium. All right. So next item up is the Thomas Borden Farm.
Are you gonna set this now, or what are you gonna do this?
Yeah, it's,
Should we sit over there?
Do you wanna do a little?
What do you?
yeah.
Well, you
We'll
can
do a little
split-
history and then we'll.
Okay.
Behind you.
So just state your names for us, please.
Paul Ferlin, Administrator of Community Utilities, City of Fall River.
Mike LeBoss here, I'm the City Water Department Forester and Project Manager for the Watuppa Reservation. And I'll also say right now, with full disclosure, that in 1974, I saw Aerosmith at the Armory.
Oh, really?
So it's not only historic, but it's
Iconic.
iconic. Yeah. So, the first project we're going to present tonight, well, first of all, I wanted to just thank the committee again for its support of our past projects. In 2017, we acquired the Joseph property. Last year, we closed on 3 different properties. We closed on the Damaris, the Costamello, and the Macabre property, all supported in a huge way by the committee. All of these properties now either protect water supply, habitat, and they're all open to the public. There's a lot of new trails, a lot of new public access on these properties, so we feel like the city is benefited quite a lot by that, and we thank you for supporting these projects. And the second thing I'd like to say is that, so our first presentation, the water department, the city of Fall River has no shortage of tremendous potential projects. We brought 10 projects before you, and we heard the message, which was
Narrow it down.
prioritize, and so we cleared the deck a little bit. So,
Makes our life a little easier.
yeah. So and they're all.
We thank you for that.
They're all, we're doing what we can. They're all good projects, but in particular, we wanted to focus on this one. This is a property that it's almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire this property. It's had a couple of iterations. We started out calling it Adirondack Farm, which is its present name under the present owners. Stepping back a little bit, we discovered it was once owned by Spencer Macabre, and then with a little more history, we find out, like everything around here, it goes back to the Borden. So it's in the Borden family in the mid-1800s. And basically what it is a 10-acre farm, or actually a little over 9-acre farm, and it's on the east shore of the North Watuppa Pond. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you a video drone flyover that was taken by Diamond students just a few weeks ago. I think the one sunny day we had in a period of about 10 rain days. But it will be you'll get to see a sort of a almost like being there. It's going to roll out from Blossom Road, and it's going to go all the way down the pond. So you get to see the dimensions and the historic character of the farm. Primarily, it started out as a land conservation watershed protection project. There's very few shoreline properties left that are privately owned that are not protected on the North Watuppa Pond. We all think that the reservation protects all shoreline. It doesn't necessarily. So this was one that we identified, and it was on our list. And of course, these kind of projects are driven by opportunity, and the people who own the property have lived there for 40 years, and it's time for them to be thinking about doing something different. And due to the relationship that the city has had with them over the years, they've given us an opportunity to see if we, in fact, would be interested in acquiring it, and we are very much so. But as I said, it started out to be a land conservation project, but the house itself is also a and we've been talking for years, in fact, almost 20 years now. When the bioreserve was first created, we're partners with the state, with the trustees of reservations, and the city. That partnership talked about building an environmental education and discovery center, and it's never materialized for different reasons. But the partnership has always felt strongly that the way for the city to really maximize its benefit of the bioreserve, which now is 16,000 acres. It starts at the Westport line and the Dartmouth line goes all the way to Lakeville, and it's continuing to grow. The best way for the city to really benefit from it is to have a place where we can be bringing school children and adults learning what is out there in terms of not only the ecology but cultural history. There's just so much out there that really represents history going back to the 1600s, how we used to use land, what Fall River looked like before the urban part was developed. So we've been working with Roger Williams University. In fact, if you have your package in front of you, as you flip through, you'll see, actually, I don't have your package in front of me.
This study was done by Roger Williams University, the center, Community Partnership Center. They actually started a couple of years ago with Mike and went around to a bunch of areas within the bioreserve in the city to try to locate a center. Mike started to kick that off a couple of years ago. This parcel wasn't originally identified as one, but then last year Mike brought it to their attention. So.
Yeah, so we were initially, the feasibility of a bioreserve discovery center really started with where would we put it. One of the challenges of the bioreserve is to get people who only live 10 minutes away on the other side of the pond, but to sort of bust through that ceiling of, it's really close, folks, but a combination of it seems far because of the barrier of the pond and the bad roads and this and that. So we looked at as many as 15 different sites. And this one was actually on the list. It was really low. But then, like I said, once you realize that the house might be available, it started to dawn, some of the other aspects of it dawned on us, not the least one of which is this is the only parcel on Blossom Road where you can actually see the pond. And so a big part of environmental education from the water department standpoint ties into the water supply, and there's the water supply right there at the foot of the pond. So all of these things said,
I have to ask you, how is it that when they originally protected the, you know my question already?
Yeah, why didn't they protect us already?
Yeah, because all the other properties were bought out originally.
Yeah,
But
well,
they left some open.
right. So, so remember this, I mean, with a couple of exceptions that in the beginning, which were taken by eminent domain. Eminent domain isn't necessarily the most friendly way to go about doing land conservation. So that worked well in the late 1800s, but as the land conservation efforts, got into the 20th century, it became more of a voluntary thing. We had agents, they would knock on doors, similar to what I do today, right? You're developing relationships with landowners, you're looking for opportunities, and not everybody agreed to it. The farms...
So the Spencer Board in Interlochen, was that an eminent domain case, or did they sell out voluntarily?
I'd say we kind of wore them out. Generations changed. It was a battle in terms of conflict. We continued to raise the water levels. That was really making them uncomfortable on the island. So every one of these is a little micro drama. But these were working farms, right, in the 1800s and the early 1900s. So that's why this is a farm. In fact, the last couple of parcels that we haven't really negotiated yet are farms. Well, they were farms. Surrounded by stone walls. And you can see that there was a time that the owners weren't willing to part with it because they were making their living there. So, but this is an unusual property in that it's still a farm. There's still chickens and ducks and things like that. Only recently did he get rid of livestock. He used to raise sheep for Easter lamb, Paschal lambs and whatnot. So we're really we're at this moment in time. Like I said, not to be dramatic about it, but this is a generational moment for this family who've been good stewards of the property for 40 years. There are no more farms in Fall River. There's one on Meridian Street, but this has all the elements still intact: the walls, the barn, the house, and it's got the view of the pond. Maybe this would be a good time to look at the.
Yeah. As Mike said, this flyover was done by Diamond students. Mike worked with them to come out.
So, bird's eye view, we were just at Blossom Road, real fast. We just passed the barn. So now this is the back 7 acres behind the barn. And you see the fields are divided by a farm lane, which is stone wall lined on either side. Oh, that's nice. There we go. And then there's the pond.
Cemetery.
And there's a rural cemetery on there, on the property. That's here we are again. Now we're looking back to Blossom Road. You know, so the previous view, you're looking across the pond, and when you're on the ground, actually, you don't really see most of the development across the pond at all, so it's really a very rural, kind of a wild look to it. You're looking at a cove, and in fact, some of the, Bill Gonzalo from Diamond is helping me do some historic research on it. The cove right behind the farm was once leased for ice harvesting, so I think as we do further study on this, we're going to find more interesting aspects of it. Thomas Borden himself is buried right on the farm at the little cemetery, which is sort of the cemetery that time forgot because it isn't really on any particular register, and yet it's privately owned and privately cared for. There's the barn again. So that's pretty much the flavor of it. The woods to the side is part of the Watuppa Reservation, and so this farm parcel connects not only to the Westport line is on the other side of the trees that you see in the distance. So it not only connects to Westport, but it also connects north to the Watuppa Reservation and the Indian Cemetery, which is just a couple of parcels away. So it's an iconic farm. It's open farmland. In the past, he's actually tried to go into the agricultural preservation restriction program. He's never been accepted. That was kind of frustrating to him because he's been working on this for over 20 years to see it protected. There's the drone shadow. And so now you're actually like walking the lane. This is at eye view. You're walking down toward the pond. This is a very cool day. These guys really did some good work for us. There's the cemetery, kind of a view of the pond. That's pretty much it. Nothing more is going to happen. Cemeteries, I mean, the stones themselves are, there's...
The electrical that I see, is that still active? Is that still like...
Yeah, thanks, Tim. That's a great question because that's one of the interesting parts about this project. Montauk Electric, years ago, bought 4 acres from the Freeloves, who, another, Fall River name, they were one of the owners of this farm as well, bought the fee interest and put the power line through. And so right now, the farm doesn't go down to the shore, but National Grid is going to donate the 4 acres to reconnect to the farm. So this, what is now a 9-acre farm, when the project is completed, will actually be, is that 11? Did the math, 11 acres. So that's where we're going with this.
Will the power lines be gone too, or they'll?
Oh, the power lines are going to stay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
power lines will stay,
The
they'll have
land.
an easement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of unusual. It's very seldom does land go from the power company back to a municipality. In 1960, we gave easements we had miles of easement to the Montauk Electric through the Watuppa Reservation. That was cleared and,
Yeah.
not necessarily great for habitat. It doesn't really impact the water quality at all, but but they, we've had a great partnership with National Grid for years because of all that interface we have with them, because of power lines, distribution lines, and tree removal and all of that. We just have a really good working relationship with them, and so that's something they're willing to contribute to the project. So it is not on the historic register, but the commission has actually certified that it is historic in its nature, and so that's why we feel strongly that not only is this an open space project, but it's a historic preservation project in that the house itself is like 150 years old or more, and it's our intention to preserve the character of the house, but to convert it, and as you'll see in your package, you'll see some of the artist conceptions, if you will, or students' conceptions of how we're going to adaptively reuse the house for.
Looking through the project, is it Diamond that would possibly be doing that work?
So, yes, so Diamond has written a support letter and stated the intention to help us. This is so preliminary, we don't have solid plans.
Yeah, and,
Um,
I mean, once you would follow the Secretary of Interior standards for the barn and for the house.
Yes, correct, for all
Correct.
exterior work.
Yeah, we're not gonna, we're not gonna,
For the exterior part of it.
yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
Exactly.
obviously interior, like, you would modify it a little bit more than that, but exterior-wise, it would be to
Yeah.
the original intent.
And, I mean, why wouldn't we? We appreciate
Yeah, yeah.
those values, and that's part of what really resonates about this. We're gonna keep,
Yeah.
honor that
It's really
heritage. So, yeah, so Diamond, in that respect, wrote a letter to support the project and just hoping that they'll have a role in it, because as you know, they've done a lot at the War Temple Reservation headquarters, 5 or 6 different shops.
Yeah.
they have. Also, there's a letter from Wildlands Trust, which would be the conservation organization that would hold the restriction on the open space, which is something we needed to provide.
Now, in the talks with the schools, would they be actually utilizing the land to do things, whether it's growing agriculture or anything like that? Or that's sort of unclear at the moment?
Well, program's still a little early to talk about, but if you recall, we had an application a few years ago to do something similar with the St. Vincent's farm, and so this is, I won't bring it up much,
Yeah.
but I will invoke it for this one time.
Don't go back to the source subject.
There were some really good ideas on the table, collaborations with BCC
Yeah.
and with Diamond, culinary, farm-to-table
Yeah.
things, and, I mean, it was
The
resonating
possibility is
on
there.
all cylinders, so
This is another site that could be,
there's no doubt that. And even beyond that, I've recently talked to Bristol Aggie and discovered that there's like 70 Fall River and 30 Westport students that go to Bristol Aggie, and this is a farm, so, and actually, the reservation isn't a farm, reservation is deep woods, so this is something a little different that may have even more opportunities for Bristol Aggie.
and what really we liked about this location for kind of the entrance to the bioreserve, it's right over the Fall River line, it's right on Blossom Road, good highway access for people to be able to access it. If the bioreserve center is there, it would be a spot to attract people, to draw people there, then they'd be able to go out and explore the rest of the bioreserve, which would be a great benefit. The city's portion of the bioreserve, plus then, as Mike mentioned earlier, we have the other partners that are involved with the bioreserve.
Because some of the
as a
trails are
whole.
close to this area, right? Some of the trails that people have access to.
Yeah.
Right
oh,
now.
Yeah. This would be the southernmost point. Let's say this happens and this becomes part of the bioreserve. This would be sort of perfect southernmost.
So the entranceway in a way.
Yeah, an entranceway or portal. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about the other funds that are, I see there's, which I love to see, and you always do that, trying to get as much bang for the buck.
I do. Thank you for saying that. But I mean that's important, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it is
our conservation dollars. We're pretty frugal with our conservation dollars, and we're trying to. There's a lot more projects in the pipeline, and we want to have a crack at a lot of them. So the more we can match, and the state just has some really great programs. They have drinking water supply grant program, which which gave us a 50% cost share for the Macamber. So that was really handy. And in this particular case, we're going to apply for the land. I always forget what land stands for. Local natural diversity, local, whatever. It used to be the self-help program,
Yeah.
and now it's called land.
That's the acronym for the.
It's the acronym,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas the drinking water supply was 50% match, land is 70% match, and we're a gateway city, so we sort of get a little extra margin. So, timing-wise, as you know, it's kind of a dance. Which comes first, CPC, the CPA
Oh,
grant,
yeah.
or the other one? So we actually took a pass on the drinking water. Although this would have been a sterling drinking water supply because this is our primary drinking water, but because land will go 70%, so we're gonna like stretch the money a little bit more. So we're asking for the 430, and we think that we're going to be in maybe another 200 or so with land, and it's going to get us very, very close to what we need for this project.
Yeah. I mean, I always love the fact that you always are looking for other avenues, not just CPC. I mean, like all your projects you come through, you've really done your homework and researched as far as you can to get as much money throughout other organizations and grants that you can. I like that, and that's what
That's
this-
our way of saying
that-
we're really grateful to
That's what
CPC.
CPC is all about, you know, I mean, others, I mean, it doesn't happen with everybody, and it's disappointing because, I personally like to see that part of it.
I think a lot of ours are good cases to be able to use with other grants. You know, a lot of them are eligible for other grants too, so that makes it kind of easy for us to be able to work with, you know, this CPC with some of the other organizations out there too.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, so before I summarize, I just wanted to point out that I left a supplemental with everybody, and really that included not only the Historic Commission, but a couple of neighborhood associations, Green Futures, and I think as time goes on, as you know, as we get deeper into this, there could be more, but it's somewhat different from the projects we've had in the past. It hits 2 of the 3 eligibility requirements, and it's something that will really fill a void. You know, we've got some partnerships with over the years with Carlos Caesar brings the Flint kids out there every spring. Morton School has done some programs, but it's been very hard to have a real beachhead where, you know, community can come, you know, have a community room, have education, evening education, for example, bring classes in, especially if it's raining. I mean, this is going to be this facility that will be available.
Are the programs that you do throughout the bioreserve online with the city's website in any way? I mean, I know I'm a friend on Facebook of, I'm not sure the organization, that talks about, you know, I know you did a nighttime walk recently.
Green Futures did a
Yeah, so it must be Green Futures that I'm like friends with.
There's a lot of different organizations, so the water department per se usually doesn't coordinate too many of those activities.
Yep.
It's usually separate organizations that coordinate those, ask for the permission if they're going into any restricted areas or areas that aren't allowed general access to. And, you know, those are the ones that typically lead the charge on some of those activities. Now, ones that Mike partakes in, you know, the interlogging walks that we did
Yep.
in the fall, and some of the other ones, those are a bit more sporadic.
Highly attended too.
Yeah, no, last fall, those were
I mean, I'd just like to shout out to the community, our residents. There's so many programs that are being put forth in the bioreserve right now. I've been on several, and they're like, the education is like fascinating, you know?
Yeah, no, it is, it's a great area, and, you know, this center, again, would kind of help us bring in the other partners too, start to bring them back to the table for whether they support, you know, a full-time educational person. You know, there was somebody from the trustees of the reservation a while ago. That person that was reallocated that position, so that position isn't in the bioreserve. But that would start to bring in maybe DCR and trustees of the reservation if we told them that we had a home for somebody to be able to run these groups and organizations out of it. It would definitely help.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
The other nice thing too is it hits 3 different categories for CPA funding.
You're right.
So
Yeah.
instead of just most come in as one category, this project, it's 3 categories. So, I mean,
It's unusual.
yeah, and CPC says that if you have more than one category that something falls under, it should be given a
Highest
higher
priority.
consideration.
Yeah,
So,
it's great.
I like the project, and you're saving the house for education. You know, I think it's a good project.
Well, I mean, remember, you've been looking or wanting a educational center. I mean, the thought of having to build one sounds expensive.
Correct.
You know, so having to convert a home that's already on a piece of property, I would think it would be less expensive, you know?
Well, it's actually part of a green solution, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
instead of building another footprint,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
preserving a footprint.
Yeah, so it's really good.
Yeah, so I mean, program, almost the sky's the limit, because, you know, we've had interest from the Appalachian Mountain Club, who has a local chapter that meets at Miles Standish, and they said, it would be great to have a place here. So of course, I flipped it around and said, it'd be great if you gave us a nice contribution, we could probably dedicate a room to your, so I mean, this is how we operate, you know,
Yeah.
we're trying to, you know.
Be resourceful.
Be resourceful.
Yeah.
Yes, we are a resource, the water
Yeah.
resource.
Good. Any other questions? I like it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item is the bioreserve conservation.
Okay, so, I'll again refer you to the package, but we, every year, we revisit a handful of parcels that we've identified, and really, you know, land conservation has been so targeted that if you look at the overall map that's in there, which basically shows color codes the protected lands in green, and you're looking at, you know, don't forget, half of the city of Fall River is water and forest. It's quite amazing.
Nobody realizes that.
Sure, right, exactly. But when you see it color-coded, you realize, wow, there's a lot of green. And so these white spots, these white shaded areas, areas without shading, are actually either developed or they may be, in fact, undeveloped opportunities. And so we have a short list of what those are. We visit them every year. And in this particular case, we've identified 3 that are going to be available because of a tax situation that we're going to be working with the city's attorney to recover those parcels. And so there are 3 parcels altogether. They are almost 30 acres. They're contiguous with other city properties and protected properties. They're actually in the Bread and Cheese Brook watershed. And the Bread and Cheese Brook is a cold water fishery, so there's brook trout in that water. And the price, we will basically pay, you know, buy these parcels paying assessed value of $54,000 for 30, almost 30 acres. There's a bit of you know, local match that we're going to put into it to do some of the diligence, to do some of the legal and other things. And also, there's a cost involved in recording conservation, I mean, of having a land trust actually hold a conservation restriction, because that conservation restriction is a commitment by the land trust to enforce the conditions of conservation on that property. So we're estimating that itself is going to cost $15,000, which again we're going to pay for from our operating budget. But so we're looking for the $54,000 to purchase the properties, and the additional 15, almost $16,000 will be the legal fees, the due diligence, and the conservation restrictions.
So these, the owners are ready to move forward with these projects?
These are ready to.
What, just curiosity-wise, when did the Blossom Hill Drive development begin or happen? How long has that been there?
Early 1990s.
Oh, wow. That's too bad, huh?
Yeah, that was the first. That was the first of the 4 subdivisions that are out there. The first one that happened, kind of at a time when we were a little bit asleep, I think, as a city. We weren't really like thinking solidly in the early 90s that, and you know, don't forget too, there was thousands of acres of undeveloped land back then, and there were people thinking that this was going to be, you know, like Fall River Roman numeral 2. So, you know, some people projected that was going to be something built out, and right now, it's actually, it's nearly built out because most of it's been protected.
That's good.
So they're high-quality parcels. In fact, they're also old farms for the most part. A lot of them have stone walls running through them. They have other, like, 18th century.
These parcels that you're
Oh, yeah.
speaking of? Yeah.
They were, and they actually connect up to the old Indian reservation, which a lot of those those parcels were owned by the farmers. It could have been owned, in fact, some of them were owned by Blossoms, the original Blossom family. And they were like woodlots. They were like a woodlot. They take the cart out there on a Saturday and cut firewood. You know, they were burning 10, 15 cords a winter, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, majority uplands, all wooded.
I mean, it's exciting. I'm glad you've saved what you have in the past, and you're still continuing trying to follow that path. I mean, again, our audience can't really see here, but there's a map on self-guided trails that are like close to this area. So I mean, people don't realize that they, you know, go through Westport and get into there, and they have access to this, you know, massive landscape.
Well, the ones that do know, and they don't necessarily spread the word, because they have it to themselves.
Yeah.
You know, we regularly recreate out there ourselves, and we see mountain bikers and trail runners, and of course, there's hunting in most of that land.
Yeah.
In hunting season, and dog walking, and just a lot of different uses.
Yeah.
And it's so big, and there's a number of parking lots, and they're very well distributed, so you can really have kind of a solitude experience out there. And there may be others out there, but it's just big enough to
Yep.
make a low density.
Yep.
And these parcels are directly attached to the bioreserve as well.
Yes, they are. And actually, the Damaris property that we acquired with CPC funds last year, there is a trailhead now on that property, and a trail that connects to this parcel, so we actually are building linearly and contiguously, so it really is adding to a whole
Mhm.
in a very nice way.
Any questions? Again, I'm just gonna put it out there that there's also funds acquired for this project too, not just CPC funds.
Yeah,
So you've, again, have other funds available to like help subsidize the cost of it too, so, which I like that again, so. Any other questions? Okay. Next project is the Security Article 97, Protection for Conservation Land.
okay. So, again, I'll refer to the package. So I'm gonna just try to abbreviate the story. When the city joined this bioreserve partnership, we actually put a conservation restriction on 3,800 acres of our, no, 4,800 acres of the Watuppa Reservation, which was an assurance for the residents that these lands would remain conservation land, would be managed with a high degree of expertise, and would remain protected forever. But at that time, all of the land that was part of the Watuppa Reservation was not included. The conservation restriction is sort of the best conservation in the land in terms of security, and so that's why this thing is titled Securing the remaining lands with a Article 97 deed restriction. So there's something that Article 97 is a deed overlay, kind of a deed restriction. It's not a conservation restriction. It's a much simpler way for a community to express that these lands, which were bought with public monies and were bought for the purpose of conservation, whether it be for recreation, whether it be for water supply protection, that the public monies were used for that purpose, and these lands shall not be used for anything else. A lot of these lands were bought in the 1800s. They were bought throughout the through the 20th century, before Article 97 was a law. And then at the latter part of the 20th century, Article 97, which is an article to the Constitution, the Massachusetts Constitution, it affords a degree of protection that has not been available. So one thing communities are doing is they're identifying which conservation parcels they may own, that they want to be sure that this kind of protection is in place. A recent case in point, the town of Dartmouth has done that. The town of Dartmouth went through all their conservation lands, working with the Conservation Committee and others in the city. They identified the parcels, and then what they did is with one overlay deed, or I'll just call it an overlay deed. With this one particular deed, they called out all the parcels that were meant to be protected, and they stated the Article 97 purpose. And that in effect locks those parcels up in the same way that, we've become accustomed to protecting some of our other parcels. So on this page 1 of the exhibits, it's just a quick list of all the parcels, and I haven't counted them up, but there's There could be 50 or more parcels, and these are all parcels that have been in the city's possession, in the water department's possession since, late 1800s and forward, that were overlooked and need to be protected. And so it's not terribly expensive. Yes, I am talking legal fees, but there's not a lot of legal work needed because, we've already done a lot of the work in-house, which in a sense is our in-kind contribution. We've identified the deeds, we have copies of the deeds, we have pretty good records. And we simply need an attorney to draw up the proper documentation, call out the deeds, and call out the original deeds, roll them up into one Article 97 deed, and be done with it. So it's called the Article 97 fix. It's kind of catchy, but it is a fix. We're asking for $21,000. At least half of that is attorney fees, and some of it relates to some of the way that we're going to put this together in a kind of a package, so it's it's in one place.
How long would something like this take to do?
A couple of months.
Yeah, a lot of the legwork of finding the old deeds and
Done.
everything, and this list right here was extremely tough, for Mike to come up with. It's going back, researching all the deeds,
Yeah.
spending hours
A lot of
between the
properties.
registry and everything, doing all that research. So that's a lot of the tough legwork. What you really need the lawyers to do is to review everything, make sure everything's good, and then put that protective Article 97 overlay deed over all of these properties. This is kind of, it's a belt and suspenders. All this land was bought, majority of it was bought prior to the Article 97 being added to the Constitution, even though it does fall, underneath the guidelines of what Article 97 was instituted for, but that may not have been in effect when these parcels were purchased. So this is something that we just feel would be really good to be able to protect these parcels. In the future, if anything ever wants to be taken out of Article 97, it has to go, special act in the legislation needs to be done to be able to remove any of these parcels once Article 97 is overlay is put in place on it.
So as a matter of course, we've, all the parcels that we've acquired through CPC funds have built in the Article 97 language in the deed. So I like the belt and suspenders. It's just an extra measure.
Well, obviously, it's an important project for you because you put the kibosh to some of your own projects, but this one stayed. So obviously, it's important to get it accomplished.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick fix.
Yeah.
And it's a potent antidote to really fortify the protection that we think we have, and we just want to make sure that it's there.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. The next item is the preserving the historic Fall River Water Department documents.
So, one more show and tell. I mentioned before that, the great part about some of these projects is Fall River has such a treasure of natural resources, the water itself, all of this. But another thing that I'm really proud of people that came before us, and it is their record keeping. This year, this Fall River Water Department the Fall River Water Works is celebrating 150 years of operating and being in business. And
When is is there a specific date?
funny you would ask me that, Mr. Souza. So I have with me, in fact, maybe we could look at this later, but this is our founding document. This is 1870. This is a group of city leaders, led by the mayor actually, determining that for health reasons and a lot of good stated reasons, we need to take stock of our water supply. We need to control the water supply. We need to make it available to people. And this ragged document is from 1870, hand-scribed, and is an example of the value of this particular project. We have, so this
Is that when the original sewer lines began going to the city then?
Sewer lines were prior to that, so sewer lines were mid-1800s. Some water lines were installed by mills prior to the 1870s,
Yeah.
but the city started to construct its water work. So the original pump station is dated 1873.
Forgive my audacity.
The original tower is
That's so-
1875.
It's really cool. Yeah.
So this was really the start of the citywide water work. Like I said, some mills had their own systems in place prior, but this really started the full piping throughout the city and full distribution citywide of water.
I did water work up in Boston. Is there any wooden piping in the city of Florida at all?
Nope, in the city of Fall River, there's never been any wooden piping found. I've heard that New Bedford has had some, even though Fall River's actual water system, the actual city-owned water system is older. But the Fall River, with all the mills that they have, they they needed a real robust system. They went with all cast iron pipes, no wood pipes, but I have heard the stories. Yeah. So, just a little bit back to what Mike was saying, the 150th anniversary again, is this year something that we're looking to do some different celebrations and different events on throughout the year. We're working with Diamond again to try to get some banners and some different promotional things made up, just so that, you know, it's not often that you find somewhere that's been around for 150 years
Yeah.
and still going strong, still needed.
Yeah, yeah.
So, the collection, if you will, is scattered in a few different places. We want to consolidate it. For example, in the planning department, this is something we found. It's an actual field book from 1934, and it says rifle range on it. Like, what? Rifle range? But and it's got, and you open it up, and it's it's just full of amazing historical information, hand drawn, accurate measurements, and this is just. I reached my hand into a box and pulled that out. And of course, the rifle range is one of the iconic parcels that make up the Woods Upper Reservation.
Yeah.
It was used for artillery practice in the 30s and the 40s. There's a number of things like that. But this is the minutes of the waterworks. We have 30 years of minutes of the Reservoir Commission, which was the body that came together to begin to buy parcel by parcel all the land around the reservoir, and that were running the farms. I mean, the city was still trying to run these farms, and and what's in these documents are just these stories that you think you're reading, something out of Charles Dickens. We had oxen, we had horses, we had bears in a cage. I mean, on and on. So these need to be protected.
Yeah.
And so on occasion, we've had opportunity to take something and actually unbind it, photocopy it, digitize it, put it in a new binder. And actually, this is an example of an old document put into a new binder. But we'll also make a duplicate, and we would put everything that is original like that. You'll never see me with that again in public. Once you help me to reproduce it, I'm going to put it away, and then we'll have something that we can handle.
Yeah.
in your share.
It's really cool.
Yeah, some of these documents are irreplaceable too. There's documents that we have in some of our vaults, bounds all around Long Pond, which is, as everybody knows, is in Freetown, but there was legislation back in the 30s of the rights and the protections of Long Pond and how Fall River actually played into that pond as well as many other ponds around the area. So it's a wealth of knowledge that the water department has a wealth of information that we just want to be able to preserve, so that going forward in the future, we're able to, if our rights are ever needed anywhere else, or if that information is needed, it's definitely usable. One of the other documents that we do have is what we call the pipe books. They're upstairs in our vault in the water department, and those are actually some of the oldest records of who owned parcels. After the Great Fire that destroyed City Hall, a lot of the records of who owned what may have been lost in the actual City Hall. The pipe books that we call them is when people tied their parcels into the water mains that were run by it, and those have actually been used to settle land court cases on the ownership of it. So preserving a lot of these things is something, being able to digitize them, so when somebody comes in, we don't have to take out the actual
Occasionally
books.
you still find yourself going back to these old documents.
Oh, without a
Jim,
doubt.
we use it in the preservation center, we call our office for the records, that's part of how we determine when properties are built. Because the registry of deed has, we'll have one number, then we can go to the building department to find out if there's permits, and then we go with the water department, see when the water is tied in. And that's how we do this triumvirate security forensic to see when properties are actually built.
Yeah, so protecting that stuff, again, so we don't have to take it out in public and it doesn't have to be used, is something that would be really good for us.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
awesome. Good presentations, thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
Good considerations.
when we did, for the building department, was that not the same, when we did the,
Same one?
Yep,
No,
yeah,
that's the
Sanborn
Sanborn
maps.
maps.
So that's
Oh.
some
It's this,
planning.
yes,
Same
similar idea.
Price-wise, I don't remember exactly, but same idea of what's
Yeah.
gonna be done.
that's a good
It just
idea.
depends, because I don't think the Sanborn maps had quite the extensive amount of documents that they probably do, so it was a little bit.
Yeah.
Upon seawall.
Same idea.
Okay, so that's all the funding hearing projects for FY '21. Next item up is an emergency funding application for the Northwood Tupper Pond Seawall Stabilization Plan.
Thank you very much. So, in front of you, we've decided this year to ask for some emergency funding to be able to move forward with almost a feasibility study and existing condition study of the Northwood Tupper Pond seawalls that surround the pond. In all different areas throughout the pond surrounding it, these cut granite stone walls were constructed for protection of either runoff or different areas. You can see them on the northern shore next to the causeway, on the far south side next to 195, and then over next to 1875 pump station. But there's other areas around the pond where the walls have deteriorated even more. What this study would really help us do is get a full evaluation. It's been talked about for years. Everybody always talked about wanting to move forward in protecting these walls, especially the causeway, or redoing these walls, trying to save them. Me and Mike were talking, and we really thought that the first step would really be able to go out there and see what walls were there, so that we have kind of a full inventory to be able to move forward. So then we could start to pick, smaller projects and hopefully be able to get funding, whether it's through CPC or other organizations, whether it's Mass Historical. There's always been talk, and I haven't seen anything, but I've heard rumors that these are related in some way to Olmsted, the design of some of these walls, and his overall design that he did within the city. So that's something else that we wanted to kind of look into to see whether there would be funding opportunities, whether they actually are related to the Olmsted design, and whether there'd be funding opportunities through that. So that's kind of why we were hoping to be able to get this funded through an emergency funding opportunity, seeing that it's a small study that we'd like to move forward with. And that way we'd be able to be keyed up to be able to come forward with further projects in the future.
Okay. So, any questions? Yes, Al?
Why is this an emergency project?
Again, so that way we'd be able to move forward. I think the feasibility is kind of fell a bit under the emergency option through the CPC. I know there was other ones done in the past. That way, if you look at some of the conditions of some of those walls out there, the sooner that we're able to get to stabilizing those and moving forward, the better we think.
Yeah, if I could just sort of picture in your mind, most people know the North Watuppa Pond Causeway, which is extremely scenic, and everybody anybody who sees it thinks of, well, you might even think of Newport in a certain way, because it's a very dramatic cut granite stone wall. And then you look at the edges, like the far edges, and you can see where the energy from the waves has undermined, and these slabs, they might be 2 ton or more granite slabs that have just tumbled in, and it's undermining, and so it's a process that's been accelerating, and depending on the wind and the water action. So I think the sooner we get a handle on the extent, and also an inventory, because there's some in the north, there's some on the east, there's some along the Narrows near the gatehouse, and I think in the course of this, it might be useful to add to our National Register. Right now, it's a whole set of things that's part of the woodworks. It's the pump house, it's the gatehouse, it's the Narrows gatehouse. There's a whole series of things, and I think that we actually should have included these walls, because they're obviously of the same granite, probably mined it and built at the same time. There's a picture that we got a couple of images from the Olmsted Park in Brookline when Charles Elliott, who was one of the architects on the staff, came to visit in 1896. He took a few pictures, and there are pictures of that wall in the late 1800s. So, and the picture I'm looking at looks. Actually, that particular section is in good shape, but then you look at some other areas and you can see the impact. So it'd be nice to get a handle on how extensive is this resource, and then with the feasibility study, determine what how to give us a beginning point, and to try to make a manageable restoration project out of it.
Does that answer your question, Al? I just have to say, I'm not a huge, emergency applications have been complicated, I think, for us, and I'm sort of unsure where we almost stand with some of them still. I feel that this project could have been applied for in October or September. So the wall's been there since the 1800s, so probably couldn't be done last September. So I have to say personally, I'm not a fan of it, just because it can wait till this next September to be funded. All your projects are wonderful. We've done good work together already, but I think this is a project that should have been applied for in September if it was that important, and that's all else. But we need to take a vote on it as a board. That's just my opinion.
Let me just add a few statements too. It might make a difference simply by the fact that our budget has been decimated, and it does have an impact on us on how serious the emergency is. I'll take one step further. I think this is an important project, because these projects take so long. You got to get the study done. You got to go through a bidding process. You could be 2 years away from even starting new work, and how much damage is happening in the meantime. So I'm feeling for you for that. That being said,
I agree with that.
I'll probably vote with Jim that.
And I totally agree with what he just said.
If I can make that.
I agree with that too. Is there some way we can table this till after we're done, and see what kind of funds we have? But I don't know if it meets emergency.
Well, we would have to
or not.
vote for the emergency funding in order to get it to that
Right.
point. So we have to make a vote today whether we want to consider this as an emergency fund application to go forward into our funding round.
I kind of don't see it as an emergency, saying that we could have had it.
In comparison to things like the roof of the library,
Right.
it was tough to
Yeah.
make that.
Yeah.
So we need to make a vote whether we want to move this forward into the funding application category, I mean, it is an emergency funding, but what, if we vote for it?
Does anybody else want to discuss it anymore?
Right, but I'm just explaining what we need to do, we can discuss it a little bit more. But we need to come up with a vote to bring it into the funding round. But we can discuss as much as we want, and then we need to take a vote, or someone needs to make a motion, whether we want to move forward with it or not, so you can speak.
No, I just want to say, what you're saying about the walls, those should actually be on the significant structures list. So that's something that if you want to come before the historical commission, we can do that along with the farm.
It's a great idea.
And add that to the list, because even though I think people get the impression that the significant structures list is only buildings, and it really isn't. There's other things on there, I mean, even, you know, like the fountain, the fountain that's right out here. I can't think of the name of it
I
right now.
can't either.
And, you know, the pillars and things like that.
Cogswell.
Cogswell Fountain, thank you. But even things such as that, they're significant. It doesn't mean that it has to be a building, and I think that's something that really should be on here.
We'll work with you on that.
Plus, when you're going for funding, historic preservation too, so.
Yep, thank you.
Well, I'll make a motion that it doesn't fall under CPC emergency funding.
Or you want to deny the project, deny,
the
I mean,
project, yeah.
so we have a motion to deny the emergency funding application. Do we have a second? So we have a motion and a second to deny. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of denying this project?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is denied.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your consideration. We got next year.
Yep, bring it back.
Mike, if you want to be put on the agenda, we can
Yeah.
put you, we're meeting March 10th, or we can do it in April, it's entirely up to you.
Let me call you, I'll look at the calendar,
Okay.
see what works.
Thank you.
Mike, I gave you a call today. Could you give me a call tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I left it on your day number, whatever that was.
I will.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is the attorney ad. So Sandy, it's in our packet here. She did a little research on it and found out to actually put the ad in the paper for a one-day insert is $736. For 7 days, it's $1,753. Yeah, I was kind of like, wow.
I think that's crazy.
I do too. So I mean, you think of like social media and what is on the internet as far as job opportunity sites like Indeed and like Craigslist.
Yeah.
So that's the discussion. Like, should we go that route or do we go this route? We can also have her post it at Government Center here, and then do social, you know, the online sites, you know, and it would surely, I've advertised on it several times.
Our
It's-
Facebook
it's
page.
highly cheaper,
Yeah,
than this, yeah.
And I know that I just saw a website, well, not a website, it was on Facebook, municipalities can put jobs openings on it, it's the whole state.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah. Because I just saw the treasurer's office and a couple other things, and everybody kind of does it, and I'm like, oh.
yeah, so I think in the
That's free.
newspaper, it's, I mean,
Is that what the option for print is, like the Herald News, is that what that would mean?
it is,
Which
yeah,
3 people would see.
right, I mean,
Really,
it's just,
because
it's,
trying to find it online,
Yeah.
when you go onto the website online, you can't find anything on there
yeah,
anyway.
but it's,
so
I mean, when
think
people are
it's
looking for
something.
jobs, these sites are the places people are
Right.
looking at.
Yeah,
Paper
it's
is
online.
unfortunately becoming obsolete, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So that's, like, if you wanna discuss it and come up with someone wants to make a motion on something,
How do we turn this into a motion? What do we want to do?
well, we actually don't even have to really make it, because it's nothing, it's no major vote, we just need to like direct Sandy on which way we wanna move next, and then put it on the next
Okay.
agenda, I would say. I mean, like I say,
Yeah.
Indeed is one, Craigslist is one, putting it, just an ad wherever they post ads at City Hall. John had an idea of a site, do you know this?
I don't know, it's the state that puts it up.
Oh, so
So it's-
we can go that route and see
But our
where.
page too, because
It's
people, a lot
mass
of people look
jobs.
at our page.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just discuss it with Sandy to like do a little research on those avenues,
Online.
and then we'll put it at our next meeting.
Because I can't see
This
spending
is
can't
a
that
guess.
much
lot, this is a
money.
lot.
$1,700 for, se- I-
Especially we don't have all that
Yeah.
much money. We wanna really utilize what we have the best way we can.
for me, it's
so
like,
that
we're gonna
do,
find
you know.
something anyway,
Right.
just at a lot
That's
cheaper
almost
price.
a third of what we want to pay somebody,
Right,
Yeah, so,
Yeah, it's so much.
you know.
it's a lot.
yep.
So we'll just add that onto the next agenda.
Well, the other option too is at the next meeting when Paul is here, since he is an attorney, he may have other
Options.
other
That's true, too.
thoughts as
That's a
to
good point.
where we could find an
That's a
attorney,
good point.
because he would have connections in that way, so.
Good point.
Yeah.
We'll just add it onto the next meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion to table this topic till the next agenda.
Second.
till the next meeting.
So we have a motion and a second to table the attorney ad. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we want to set up a date for the next meeting by any chance?
What does she have?
So Sandy's away, I think, until the 10th. Is a Mondays, are Mondays a bad day for people? I was thinking maybe March, where we're at, the 25th? Or the 11th? How's the March 11th? It's on a Wednesday. Is that a bad day? Wednesdays?
That's fine.
March 11th is I have a Vietnam meet.
It's Tuesday the 10th?
How about Tuesday, the 10th?
Tuesday
I
the 10th.
see- I have historical commission.
And I think that's a tough day for them to schedule too.
Okay, so you want to try for March 16th?
Sure.
It's a Monday.
I have a doctor's appointment in Boston, so I can't have it back in time.
I'm going back from New York that day, so I don't know.
Okay, so
Wednesday the 18th?
Wednesday, the 18th. I don't want to go really deep into the month because we want to start
Yeah.
the process of deliberating, then voting, you know what I mean? So I mean, that's
How about
fine.
Thursday the 12th? How
Yeah, I
about
was just
the
gonna
12th?
say, is the Thursday the 12th?
Thursdays.
Well,
Well,
that's the
that's
day
the,
of that
uh,
design charrette that I thought
Oh,
it
right.
might be
Oh,
important for
yeah,
us to
yeah.
be a part of.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Good, yeah.
The
Thursday's
18th.
not usually good for me
18th.
anyway, but.
Well, we wouldn't have to be there all the time, it's just a matter of going in and marking down whatever you think is necessary, so maybe we could do both.
That's fine. I mean, is that, if we can do March 12th, it's fine with me.
I may
That's
not,
fine.
I may not be here, because Thursdays are usually tough.
Well, I think it's important for all of us to be here. I would rather come up with a day where everyone's available, because I think it's important for us to discuss, because we're doing deliberations. And I think everyone together is important to like discuss all of these items. So,
I
we'll
can
just,
do the 18th, I can do the 16th, which is the Monday.
well, it seems like,
Oh.
well, someone can't do the
16th,
16th, so they,
okay.
I say we go
Do
for,
the 16th.
Okay.
We'll do the 18th.
we'll do the 18th. We'll set up a date for that. As far as the deliberations go, I mean, is it something we think we're gonna be able to do? Because that we'll do in one, just speak about them all in one night. And then we can go back on our own, see where we wanna vote, that type of thing. But I mean, this will get us the deliberation part going. And then, like, I will speak with Sandy and see what else we want. Well, obviously, we'll put the attorney ad back on, and then whatever else minor. I wouldn't wanna put a lot of other things on the agenda, just because I think going through 18 projects, we need some time, and I'd like to have as much time as we can to deliberate and talk about it and discuss why we think they're good or bad or indifferent.
On the 18th, do we turn in the scores that we?
No, all we're
That doesn't go
doing,
into
we're
this.
gonna sit down and we're gonna talk about each project, why we think it's a good project, or a bad project,
Alrighty.
or we don't want the project, you know, personally, like, or whatever our thoughts are, so it's just a discussion,
Okay.
so. So that's what we'll set up that date for. So we're gonna set the date for March 18th.
Okay.
Oh, Sandy's on vacation till the 16th anyway, so she wouldn't be here for the 12th.
Perfect.
Yeah, that
So
works.
she, because I just looked, so she comes back 3/16.
Okay. So March 18th will be the date. All right, anything else anybody wanna add
To that? No.
to our meeting?
I'd be happy to make a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Oh, aye.
Any opposed? Good night, everybody.
Looks like